Okay, forget the carols and the cozy holiday specials for just a minute. We're about to peel back the layers on a completely different story of the holiday season. The whole premise here is simple, and yeah, it's pretty confrontational. The traditions you know and love might have a history you've never been told.
Everything we're about to dive into really starts with this one single question. And it's a question aimed right at the heart of the season. So let's follow the trail our source material lays out and just see where this thing leads. So, Act 1. Our source calls this a forensic audit, and our investigation doesn't start in a manger. No, it starts in the very heart of the Roman Empire, chasing down the accusation of a stolen date.
The key here, what you really have to see, is the chronology. Just look at the dates. Long before anyone was celebrating Christmas on December 25th, the Roman calendar was already booked solid. You've got Saturnalia, this massive, week-long party that ends on the 23rd. Then, boom, in 274 AD, the emperor himself makes December 25th the official birthday of the unconquered sun, a huge state holiday. It's only after all of that, in 336 AD, that we get the first clear record of the church celebrating the Nativity on that exact same day. So the timeline itself makes you ask the question, is that just a coincidence, or was it a hostile takeover?
And that leads us to the central claim from our source material. The argument is that this was no accident. This was a deliberate rebranding, a pretty genius strategic move, actually, to absorb a massive pagan holiday and just redirect all that festive energy toward a new main character. And here's the Exhibit A. Our source calls it the forensic double entry. This comes from a single document from 354 AD. On one page, the official Roman calendar lists December 25th as the birthday of the unconquered sun, and it even schedules 30 chariot races. A huge deal. But then, in another section of the very same document, a list of Christian feasts marks that exact same date as the birth of Christ. It's like a perfect snapshot of two worlds colliding and competing on the very same patch of calendar real estate. And get this, according to the source, this wasn't some kind of secret. Church fathers like Augustine of Hippo, they talked about it openly. He basically tells his congregation, look, we all know what day this is, we're celebrating it, but not for the sun, we're celebrating it for the one who made the sun. It's presented as stone-cold evidence of a conscious strategy. Take the powerful solar imagery that everyone already loves and just claim it for a brand new purpose.
Okay, so the date's been audited. Now we put the central symbol on trial. The investigation shifts from the when of the holiday to the what. Specifically, that ritual of bringing a decorated tree right into your home.
The source material points us to this incredibly stark warning from the prophet Jeremiah. It is a direct command. Learn not the way of the heathen. And what's the very next thing he describes? A custom that, let's be honest, sounds eerily familiar, cutting a tree out of the forest and decking it out.
Now, to be perfectly clear, the source is careful to point out that Jeremiah isn't literally describing a 21st century Christmas tree. If you look at the original text, as you can see here, it's talking about a pasel, a graven image, a carved idol that's then plated with metal and dressed up in clothes. So the argument isn't that a Christmas tree is that idol. The argument is that the underlying pattern, the archetype of taking wood from the forest and decorating it for ritual use, is what's being condemned.
And this is where it gets really fascinating. Just look at how this table traces the pattern across totally different cultures. You've got the Canaanite Asherah pole, which Scripture explicitly prohibited. You've got the sacred oak of Thor for the Germanic tribes. And then, the modern Christmas tree. The table shows that the form, the location, the decorations, they all change over time. But the source argues that the core ritual, a decorated tree as a focal point, it just stays remarkably consistent, a pagan practice that eventually got adopted by modern custom. And this slide just drives home the central conflict, right? It's the whole issue in a nutshell. We look at it and call it festive. The source's interpretation of Scripture, however, calls the underlying practice the way of the heathen.
So we've gone through ancient history, we've gone through ancient rituals, but why does any of this actually matter today? Well, Act 3 argues the answer is brutally simple. Just follow the money. This is where the historical argument morphs into a modern economic critique.
It all starts with a single, stark number, 36%. That's it. According to the data, that is how many people will take on debt this month just to get through the holiday season. That's not history, that is the immediate financial reality for millions of people. And where is all that debt coming from? Just take a look at the breakdown. This isn't just any debt, it is overwhelmingly high interest debt. 65% on credit cards, another 24% on store cards. Our source argues that this is the very engine that fuels the season, and it's built on borrowing money at potentially crippling interest rates.
This slide right here really illustrates the mind-boggling scale of the whole system. On the one side, you have this nearly trillion-dollar retail machine, and on the other, the burden on the individual, an average debt of over $1,000, often financed at a jaw-dropping 21% interest. The macroeconomic boom is shown to be directly funded by microeconomic pain.
And here it is, the source's absolutely brutal summary of that system. The argument is that the cultural pressure to spend creates a kind of modern-day servitude. You exchange your future financial freedom for what it calls plastic joy. The commercial system gets rich, and the individual, well, the individual gets the burden of debt. They get the chains.
To frame this whole economic critique, the source brings in some heavy artillery from the Book of Revelation. It draws a straight line from the merchants of ancient Babylon who traded in luxury goods and even the souls of men to the modern holiday machine. And it poses a really pointed question. If all the holiday spending just stopped tomorrow, who would weep, the faithful or the merchants?
Okay, we've audited the history, we've dissected the rituals, and we've followed the money. Now we arrive at the final act. The analysis is done. This part is all about drawing a line in the sand and presenting a choice.
The source argues that all this evidence we've just walked through, it acts like a giant splitting maul. It struck the tradition and it has split it wide open, revealing what's really inside.
And this split reveals a very stark choice. On one side, you've got what the source calls the pagan husk, everything defined by its solar origins, its ritual symbols, and the consumer debt it encourages. And on the other side, you've got the true seed, defined by historical truth, scriptural purity, and financial freedom.
So, the call to action is just as uncompromising as the analysis that got us here. It's a command to separate the elements, to discard what's been identified as the worthless outer layer, the chaff, and to keep only what it calls the essential core. And so we end right back where we began, with a question. But this one isn't for us to investigate, it's a decision for you. After the historical audit, the ritual analysis, and the economic critique, the final question is really simple. Now that the tradition has been split wide open, which part are you going to choose?